Good room.
I know.
All right.
Long and thin. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be back. Before we get started, just want to take an opportunity to congratulate Lee and Teague, Sarah, Brandy, and the whole Hunter team on an exceptional conference this week. No, we're not quite done yet, but getting close. So thanks for having us all. And over the last couple of days, we have talked a lot about data and deals, and you hear from Chip about the state of the industry from a government affairs standpoint. All really important parts of the conference, but very excited to sit up here with these leaders now and talk about leadership equally, if not more important than some of those other topics that we've covered. So welcome, everybody. You know who everybody is. If you don't, there's this new thing, the World Wide Web. You can find out anything I'm told that you want and more about everybody sitting up here. But want to jump right in, and we're going to do a quick fire to start off with. We hear a lot that successful leaders really credit good leaders that they've worked alongside with forming their own leadership style, but also, interestingly, learn a lot from leaders that they don't want to emulate. So just very quickly, Danny, I'm going to start with you and go on down. Tell me one of your leadership traits that has definitely come from someone that you aspired to be similar to, and maybe one that you knew you wanted to go in a different direction.
Will do. But first of all, thank you for all of you being here. It's great when you go to a panel on the last day, you're never quite sure when you come out behind there. So really, it's great. Thank you so much. But I think the two things I'd say very, very quickly from a positive point of view is in the moment. You know, people I've really been inspired by, where I've got 5 minutes with them or an hour. Certain people are in the moment and they're dedicating their time to me at that moment in time, and it's really been inspirational. And I think in a world where distractions are so easy now, that can't happen. And I guess the negative thing, a trait that I've seen and tried to learn from, is complacency. When things are going good and it's okay in my world, and I think if the last presentation showed us anything, even if our own little world is doing good, there's some challenges out there, and you've got to be aware of them. So in the moment's good, complacency's bad.
Julianne.
Thank you, and thanks, Rachel, for leading this panel. I'm so glad that you didn't retire, because you allow us to all tell stories, and that really helps us grow our industry. So thank you for the role that you play. So I would say being allowed to be a part of the conversation. When I was early on in my career, I had mentors who would bring me in and say, just listen to how this negotiation goes, or come to this meeting, meet some of the executive team, let them get to know you. And pulling me in and making me part of the conversation is something that I do for young up-and-comers. And we're all super busy, right? There's not enough hours in the day. But when someone reaches out and says, I'd love to hear your story, do you have time? I always find that time. It might be next month. It might be only 15 minutes, but saying yes to having those conversations and sharing your story is important, even when we don't have time. And then I would say for how I don't want to be, and leaders I've had in the past that emulate this, is sort of that command and control. You have to go from A to Z in this specific way. Doesn't work. I think it stifles creativity, and each person brings their own merit, their own skills to the table, and that's what makes teams great, right? I don't want everybody to be like me. That's not going to work. I need a variety of different ways. So allowing people to be who they are just makes the team stronger.
Excellent. George?
Great. Yeah, thank you, and thanks again for having me. Compassion is the best leadership trait I've seen in other leaders, and something that I try to emulate. I mean, life gets in the way sometimes, and having that compassion for that life moment, I think, is one of the most important things we can all do as leaders. And then on the other side is failure to listen to all stakeholders. A little bit of opposite of what you saw was good, was just failure to listen to all the stakeholders, failure to understand maybe there's an opinion out there, maybe they're not the highest up person, but they've got a great idea, and needing to listen to that.
Excellent. Jim?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that we all are learn by being around people and observing, and early on, the leaders that I looked up to were the ones that were humble, and they were servant leaders. And a corollary of what's been said is giving deference where deference is not due, where that they're asking questions of when I was, first starting in the room and getting me engaged. So being humble and servant leaders has always been something I aspire to do and provide to the team. And I think the other thing is that when things are not going well, not pointing fingers and really trying to be the leader that is the calmest one in the room when the intensity is the highest. And I've seen the opposite. I think that I've been in that place and as a young leader and had to grow from that, because you continually look at what's effective and what's not effective, and that tends to not be super effective. So those are the traits that I would share.
Mitch.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see my true friends here in the audience. After all that tequila vodka, I think last night. But, I think what Jim said, a lot of our leadership style is really determined by our experiences. And so growing up, my parents came to this great country with very little in their pockets, grew up in a little motel, and they didn't have to teach me about hard work, dedication, how to treat people with respect, because I saw it every single day. And our team, our small team at the motel, was family. And I still remember every single one, the front desk, housekeepers, their names today, because they were family. And they were loyal for 10, 15 years. Now, cleaning rooms every day and summer and spring break, didn't want to be in that business, right? So growing up, it's the last thing I want to do. So now let's fast forward. The negative experience, now go to college, become a traffic transportation engineer, working in this city, and I'm apologize for all the traffic problems.
It's your fault.
I gave up. So I remember that very first day. It's my first job out of college, working as an engineer. And my boss gave me a stack of binders. And basically, he gave me a little tour and gave me a stack of binders and said, go to it. He never got to know me, who I was, what I liked, what my hobbies were, my family. And it was more on just what can I do for them, as opposed to really getting to know me as a human being. Yeah. And so when I started this company, I vowed that I would never be that type of leader and will never have that type of culture in our organization.
Excellent. And Julian, my oldest daughter, Sam, is in the room, and she thinks I'm still retired, so you just totally let the cat out of the bag. Mitch, I want to go start this one with you for a second. Vision Hospitality Group thinks that culture is so important that you've actually published a book about it. And when you open up that book, True Blue, the first page says culture trumps strategy. Certainly not a quote attributable to you, but you can have the best strategic leaders, but have a less likelihood of success if you don't have the corporate culture to back it up. How do you see corporate culture really shaping leadership today?
Yeah, I think, look, culture and leadership go hand in hand. And there's so much we could talk about culture. And when you talk about culture, and you'll see that leadership just continues to come up over and over. So I'm going to just simplify things for our company. I can't speak for how other people lead, and there's so many different kind of cultures out there, good, bad, ugly. But I think we all know that the most successful companies in the world, they're sustainable too in success. They have an incredible workplace culture. If you're selling chicken sandwiches, right, Chick-fil-A, to a luxury hotel, and it's always about people first. As our friend Chris Nacetta says, right, this is a people business serving people business. And the focus, all conference, you heard about statistics, the bricks and mortar, banking, interest rates. But we hear very little about people. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation today. So our culture, I mean, it's just pretty simple. In my opinion, there's two ways to lead. You can lead with fear, okay? How sustainable is that going to be? You could be the most strategic person in the world, the smartest person in the world, but leading by fear, you're going to be leading by yourself. Or you can lead with true, deep admiration and mutual respect. And so we look for people that share our values and beliefs, not, if they don't share our values and beliefs, then they can't be a part of our team. It's very simple. And so we lead with the heart, not just the mind. And I think that when you lead that way, amazing things you could accomplish. Now you just have to lead the way. This is where we're going. Point in the direction. What is your vision? And then you've got an entire team that will follow you. And our best leaders, the people on their team, they'll say, I will go through a brick wall for that person. And that has to be earned, not just because you have a title, you can command that. That has to be earned.
That's excellent. Jim, how about for you?
I think Mitch should just drop the mic and go on to the next question. That's good. I couldn't agree more, and I think culture is really important. It's really important to know who you are. There are different cultures out there. There are different good cultures, and there's different ways to operate. And what you, I think, need to be clear about as a leader is like who you are, what type of culture that you have, and that you're clear with people. For example, some people look at our company and we're intense. We work really hard, but we really care about each other, and you sign up for that, and that's okay. The people that are there want that. They want to be challenged. We talk about having a team of, like we think of a sports team. You don't have 5 centers. You don't have 5 point guards. You need the best talent and combination of talent on the team, and then you win together, not as an individual. And so we know who we are and the people that are there, and we care about the team. And my goal when we started Rockbridge was I was 20 years younger and 28 years younger than my 3 partners. And what I wanted to work around people that would challenge me and that would become friends on and off the court. And we built a culture that lifelong friends are created, similar to what Mitch is sharing about building family, and that people that have left are still super close friends, and have gone on to do great things, and that's really rewarding. That's a win for the culture. So I think just knowing who you are as a company and creating that culture, and then as a leader, you've got to live it. And the last thing I would share is that I really believe in forgiveness, and that humans were imperfect, and we all make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, up and down, that we just have to own them. And I do this with my kids. I do this at work. Is that I'm not 100% all the time. And when I make a mistake, make sure that I own it and share with the team that, or if I said something wrong or was disrespectful, that we own that, and that's okay. If I can do it, everybody can do it, and we put our arms around everybody and then go forward.
Such great advice. George, Mitch was saying a minute ago, obviously, that we are a people industry, an industry of people. And I've heard you say we win with our people, but also that leadership is a discipline, and it has skills that need to be developed into future leaders to really be ready to assume those roles when it's time. What are some of the skills you think today are most important for the next generation of leaders, and how are we as an industry developing those skills?
Great, yeah. Well, we win with people is Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes, the great Ohio State coach's quote, and I like to use it quite a bit because it's so important and so evident in what we do in the hospitality industry. But the second set of leaders one of that layer down, it's so important to really make sure that they understand that their voice needs to be heard. It's important to make sure that they feel comfortable in the environment. And it goes a little bit back to culture, but it's also, you have to understand the skills that build it up, and then they can come forward and give them a voice. And then once they start gaining that ground, once they see that they're valued and they have a voice, then they'll really blossom as leaders. And we've really taken advantage at Red Roof of all of the leadership programs that the industry has to offer. And we're really looking at digging down to even the manager level and offering leadership training and abilities just to really bring that out. And the results that we've seen have been unbelievable. It's been great.
Danny, how about for you?
Well, it's interesting when you talk about culture. I think everybody agrees. Culture trumps strategy. There's so much being talked about it. And of course, trying to measure if a company has a great culture is difficult. There's some empirical metrics, but it's a little bit, you know it when you see it. And I'm always fascinated when I meet new people and I ask them the question, what do you do? They answer in two ways. They either tell you their job. You know, some people say, well, I'm a software engineer, or like when I moved to Northern Virginia outside DC, it appeared 90% of the people said I'm a government contractor. That's a separate issue, I don't know why. But some people will say, well, I'm with Hilton, or I'm with Rockbridge, or I'm with this. And the reality is that I think one of the bases of cultures is actually being part of something bigger than yourself, something that you're truly a part of a legacy thing. And it's really fascinating to me when I meet people and they immediately say, oh, I'm with HIT Construction. Then they tell you what to do. Then that's an affinity with something much bigger than yourself that will outlive you. And I think that's a beautiful thing of culture. And I think sometimes where there's turnover in leadership, whether it be an independent hotel level or a company level, sometimes leaders try to impose their personality cult or leadership, well, that's not actually the thing. You know, he is hoping that what his belief in vision will way outlive him, because that's the bigger thing.
Julian, you've been a fierce advocate for greater diversity at all levels of the hospitality industry for a long time, and certainly your role at the HLA Foundation, who has a deep commitment to advancing DEI initiatives, further sustains that. Yesterday, we heard from Sheila Johnson talking about her commitment and her avenues toward a more diverse industry as well, and we're seeing some change. As we have a room full of leaders here today, what do you think we need to do as an industry to continue that momentum, or even maybe move it a little bit faster, a little bit farther?
Yeah, so the blessing and the curse of our industry is that we are very familial, right? We know we've worked with each other, we hire people we're comfortable with and we've worked with in the past, and I've done that myself. But finding talent from different places. So, as an example, IHG, we're here in Atlanta, and we are partners with some of the historical Black universities and trying to find talent out of schools that aren't necessarily hospitality schools, although we find talent there too. But, in a corporate setting like IHG, Red Roof, some of the others, you've got finance, marketing, sales, legal. I mean, you have all of these aspects of the business that are not necessarily a hotel career, right? It's the career within the hotel industry, and you've used that before, Rachel, and I think that really sums it up well. So I think pulling talent from different places that you might not necessarily think of, and then also, it is important that we continue to talk about diversity and that we have places where women can talk about issues that are affecting them, Black colleagues can talk about issues that are affecting them. But what we should no longer have are panels that are just about women's issues or about Black issues. We should have a variety of leaders talking about their subject matter expertise. And I was really glad to be on a panel, I think it was Tuesday, it's all kind of a blur at this point, but I think it was Tuesday, and I was with female colleagues, but we really didn't talk about female issues. We talked about our subject matter expertise, and I think bringing that knowledge base is so important because it creates a togetherness versus a separate then. So again, I think we have a lot of work yet to do, but we've come a long way. I mean, when I entered this business 20 years ago, I remember I was always the only one in the women's room, right? At a conference, I was literally the only one. And now there's other women in the women's room. And, you know, it's a little simple thing, but we're not the minority anymore. There's many more women in this business, and I enjoy being a part of that.
Excellent. Jim, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm all about like how do we do it and make a difference. And one of the things that has been, I think, a really positive outcome of COVID and the social unrest and looking at the future. We didn't have a diversity problem from a mindset. We had a diversity problem from intentionality. And so how do you be intentional? And that's one of the biggest aha moments for me is like, okay, well, if you're not doing anything about it, then you're not making a difference. And the point of it is all about how you create better teams. And I'm a big believer that this is about putting the best teams together. And when you have diversity of voice in the room, you create better dialogue, better conflict, better debate, and better outcomes. And so one of the things that we've always been a big believer in is the youth and youth awareness and how do you get in the room? Julianne was talking about getting in the room. Like, how do you get people in the room to realize what we do is not building rockets. We're not building rockets. Anybody can do what we do. And I remember being a young, and I grew up in a middle-class family, went to a good college, like white male, and I remember being really nervous about my first job going into the room. And so one of the things we're working on is how do we get more people in the room? How do we get people to believe that that's a possible career for them? And I think there's a big opportunity in our industry to better sell the upward mobility that can occur in in hospitality. People can go from the front desk to owning a hotel and owning multiple hotels. And I think we have a big opportunity in our space to be a bright spot of industries from a diversity standpoint. And we're just trying to continue to build intentionality so that in our little section of the world that, we're making a difference and making a difference for more people.
Excellent. Mitch, I see you nodding your head, adding.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Jim and Julian. I mean, we have to, one day, hopefully, we don't have to talk about this subject. And I was at that panel of yours, and it was fantastic. And you had some incredible, smart people, that happened to be women, that were talking about the subject of hotels and all aspects of it. So until that time comes, we've got to continue to build awareness. And we've come such a long way. But the only thing I'll add is intentionality, Jim, that you mentioned. We have to be much more strategic and intentional about it. We are actively seeking our rock star general managers and promoting them into regional position, mentoring and promoting them and giving them that opportunity just to be, of course, again, building on being strategic about it.
Excellent. Danny, I want to switch gears for a second. Everybody who's here knows how critically important relationship building is in this industry. And we were having a conversation the other day, and you shared a different perspective on the types of relationships that the leaders of really today, but as we go into tomorrow, are going to need to focus on, especially from a brand standpoint. Would you share some of that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, I think as human beings, the single most important thing we have is relationships, right? Whether it be finding our partner in life, our children, and from a business point of view, I think it's understanding where there are truly common ground in all of us. And if you think of, the organization I work for, we're a branding company. We're a branding company that is all about delivering the best consistent branding experiences for our guests. But we're 100% relying upon individuals and companies to build the bricks and mortar. And then there's the management companies that have, a slightly different objective. So we all have slightly different objectives, but we all share a common theme of making sure we have a very, very strong industry. And I think it's finding that common ground. And again, the presentation that preceded us, I think, shows that you can do that. But I believe in relationships, it's like an old saying, no matter whether you're trying to drive diversity or you believe in sustainability or you believe in having these great relationships. There's the company professed vision, but actually to make it live and breathe, every one of us has to make a difference in the 6 foot around us. Just finding what we individually can do, and whether it be that diversity thing, we always say, at Hilton we're doing this. But actually, if it's going to live and breathe is, what have I done? What have I personally done? And it's the same with relationships. And I can tell you one of the best pieces of advice that's ever been given to me, and I remember it since I was a young kid, is because I moved around a lot as a kid. My dad moved around a lot. So I was always making new friends. And somebody once told me, hey, if you want friends, be a friend. And really, really reach out. And if I can tell this one very quick story that emphasizes this to me. A couple of years ago, we bought a house in South Carolina as kind of a vacation home. And, it's on a street with other houses, and you've got your grass there. And then there's land in between that has trees and shrubs. And, when you buy a house, they do the survey, and they stick those stakes in the ground, right, with a colored thing. And when I first went down to there's a piece of ground with flowers and shrubs on it that's obviously on my part of the land because there's stakes showing it. And my neighbor was there cleaning it up, and that's how he introduced himself to me. And he said, listen, I know you're not going to be around a lot. If it's okay with you, I do gardening all the time. This is my passion. You got some dude you pay to clean the lawn. Do you mind if I just look after this thing for you? And we've become very good friends because of that outreach. So that's relationships and most important thing, but it starts with you.
Absolutely. George, how about for you?
Yeah, relationships is the key to franchising. I mean, it's, we really treat our franchisees like true partners. And having that true partnership, understanding, again, a little bit what Danny was saying, I mean, we're all working towards that common goal and understanding that it's exceptionally important. Also, though, what I think COVID taught us is that having a relationship with your community as a hotelier is exceptionally important nowadays. And I think we always felt like we were part of our communities in which hotels were located, but I think more so it got amplified when we were housing first responders during COVID, when we were housing nurses and doctors and all those kind of things. And I think now that relationship with your community is so much more important. And not only to be good corporate citizens, but also to really help with all of the issues that we face as an industry. So.
Well, and I think we referenced Chip's remarks earlier a couple of times as well, having great relationships with your elected officials, with your city services and everything else. Jim, I want to turn to the topic of social responsibility for a minute. We are to a point now where it is clearly not a feel-good talking point anymore, but a really critical part of everyone's business plan. And society today demands a lot more from companies. Employees, customers want to know what businesses are doing, and most of the folks who are leaders within their organizations are also community leaders. What is your company doing, and what do you see as the role of social responsibility in leadership today?
Yeah, great question. As part of our company, and you talk about leaders that you look up to, and early on in my career, the leaders I looked up to were the ones really supporting and giving more than they were taking, and made a commitment to that as an organization. And so we've been, you can't do everything, and what we want to do is really make a difference. And so we've been heavily involved in our community with Big Brothers Big Sisters. We have a youth, big believer in youth, that we're gonna, like, even on diversity, like, how do you change the viewpoints? It's typically not with adults. Adults can learn, but a lot of adults are stuck in their ways. But the kids, they don't. A big believer that they're not born racist or anti-misogynist or whatever negative thing that society teaches them. And so if we as a society have a commitment to make our communities better. And so how do you do that? How do you make a bigger difference? We spend a lot of time with youth and trying to change the awareness of getting people in the room together that are different, but we're the same, and the conversation should become, they're a good person, they're a giving person, they're a nice person, they're a great leader, not any label. And so that's where we spend a lot of time in our community. Also, one of the things that we've done, it's been a cornerstone of our company, is just giving back. We feel we have this, one of our rocks is responsibility. We have a bigger responsibility because we've been given gifts, and that we have a responsibility to use those gifts for good. And one of the things we've done in Columbus, we started an event called RTRX that 12 years ago we listened to a speaker. The largest single day fundraiser for cancer research is actually in Columbus, Ohio. And it's called Pelotonia, and it's incredible. It's an incredible experience. And we wanted to figure out, hey, how do we make a difference in that 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will get cancer. And so if you think about your teams and your companies, that this is a big, really important thing. And so we've rallied around that, and we started this event. And we've raised $7 million in 12 years and for cancer research. But the purpose of that is, how do we intersect business and social responsibility? We reject the notion, like ESG. We just came out with our first ESG report this year, which I'm happy to share with anybody, that it was documenting things that we've been doing, but we reject the notion that good ESG means lower returns. We can be smart and be good stewards and still deliver on the returns. And that's what we want to do. And so we try to instill it throughout our organization. And the last thing I'll share from a team standpoint is that it has been incredibly galvanizing of our organization because of the events and the things that we do. So we've integrated team building events around social responsibility, and not because we want an award for it, because we think it's our responsibility to do it.
And Mitch, I know firsthand how critically important this is to you and your leadership. I've actually had the privilege of being inspired by and learning from you on the areas of social responsibility since I entered the industry in '98, or this aspect of it. Certainly talking anti-human trafficking long before we were as an industry or through the organizations. Talk a little bit about how that has become such an important part of your vision.
No, absolutely. So Danny, you touched on earlier about purpose, right? People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, have a sense of purpose, and more than ever now. We're talking about today, what we just went through the last 3 years. And so I'm going to share this. You've heard this story, but I'm going to share it. John F. Kennedy went to NASA and met a janitor with a broom. And he asked this person, "So what do you do here?" And he said, "Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon." That's purpose. And so we you know, just like Jim, all these companies give back in so many ways. And it's just a core pillar of our company, right? So we partner with 75 nonprofits a year in various ways. We encourage our associates to volunteer as opposed to where others are saying, what are you doing? And it has become the DNA of our company. And so getting back to human trafficking, about 10, 12 years ago, I had no idea that this was existing here in this great country, in my small town where we live, and in our industry, right? And so the data that was presented to us was just appalling. And so we just said, we're going to do something about this. And our team wanted to do something about this. But there was nothing out there. There was no awareness training. There was no training out there at all. People were looking the other way. They did not want the spotlight of that to be on our industry. So guess what? When there's nothing out there, we created our own. And we went statewide, and we partnered with the national associations, EPCAT and so forth. We were the first hotel company to partner with EPCAT in the country. And it was really eye-opening. We were able to change laws in the state of Tennessee. It was a misdemeanor to traffic a minor in the state of Tennessee. And it was a Class A felony to sell marijuana, even though marijuana is legal in 30, 40 states. So we would change those archaic laws and other laws. And Tennessee went from the worst state to the #1 state for laws fighting human trafficking. So grassroots efforts do help. Grassroots efforts do help, and it provides a purpose for your team as well.
That's excellent. Well, as we knew, we're going to run out of time, and thanks to Chip, we're going to narrow it down just a couple more minutes. But I'm going to do one last quick fire. We hear so much about personal branding today, something that certainly we weren't talking about 20, 25 years ago. And being the leader you want to be, living your values and these other things. So Danny, I'm going to start with you and ask, do you think you have a personal brand? If you're willing to share it, and how important do you think it is that the leaders of tomorrow really have that identity through a personal brand?
Great question. I think it's interesting where you find yourself in life is how you can make a difference. So there's so many entrepreneurs in this room who've built great companies. I chose a different route. I work for a great company and a big company. So at the end of the day, the single greatest impact I can have is making sure that during my tenure, when it's done, there's a whole bunch of people around our organization and maybe even our industry that I've had a personal effect on, a positive effect, and help them be in a position. So I don't know if that's what my brand will be, but if you ask me what I want my brand to be when I'm done is, that guy helped a lot of people get where they are today, and that will, I'll take that.
That's fantastic. Julianne?
I'll share that, figuring out what your personal brand is or who you are is critical. And for me, I've gotten there by being very introspective and understanding kind of what my character defaults are, right? How I behave in certain ways, in certain areas, how I react under pressure, and being really mindful of how I'm engaging with others, that sort of self-awareness. And sometimes that's hard to do alone. I think it's very difficult to do alone. So having people around me who are honest, give me really great feedback. My best friend is someone I met in kindergarten, my husband I met in high school, and they really know who I am and can kind of call me out on my own BS. Because as you grow as a leader, I think we can fall victim to surrounding ourselves with yes people, and that's the worst thing, right? Because then you end up not really being able to come from a place of truth, and then being able to pull that out from others. So highly recommend doing, Myers-Briggs and all those types of things to really understand what it is that makes you tick, and allowing yourself to exemplify or highlight that versus trying to be like somebody else. I admire a lot of people, but the only person I can be is myself, and I have certain traits that are valuable that I want to continue to amplify. So surrounding myself with people who can really call out, my areas of improvement and things like that, I think are paramount.
George?
Yeah, well, for me, it's just about being humble, being approachable, not forgetting where you came from. I come from a Greek immigrant family. My grandfather owned hotels in Ohio, and I tell everybody I didn't get a chance to live in the hotel, but he would always give me the used mattresses. So I guess that was a pretty equivalent to living in a hotel. But and don't forget where you came from, and don't forget your humble roots. Much like LeBron James, I'm just a kid from Northeast Ohio. So.
Nice. Jim?
I'm only half Greek. We learned this yesterday. And I think continuous learning, and a corollary to what George said, just being humble, being in the room, and recognizing that we all put our pants on the same way. And I share that. Don't judge me at any one point in time. Judge me over time, because I'm making mistakes too. And so just really having a passion for getting better, and so people can share. I actually like when you get feedback. People, you're in a CEO position and they're afraid to give you feedback. When you get feedback, I love it. It's how you improve. So really trying to, continue that and have that culture within the company.
Mitch?
Yeah, look, we talk about work-life balance, right, more than ever, especially, again, what we just all went through. And our associates are demanding that more than ever. And so I guess I'll leave you with a quote from Tony Hsieh, the late founder of Zappos, right? He knew nothing about e-retailing, knew nothing about shoes, but became the largest e-retailer of shoes in the country. So you ask, how? Because he focused on people. He focused on their lives, not just at the workplace, but the whole person. And so he would often say, if work is not work, there's nothing to balance, and it's just life.
That's excellent. And I will share mine as well. I wake up every morning and I want to be the best mom and wife and industry contributor that I can be. I'm the best daughter and friend, and I'm going to make a ton of mistakes, and I hope I learn from every single one of them and wake up tomorrow doing it all over again, but also at the same time recognizing that I may not have tomorrow. So to continue to learn from all of you is such a big part of my brand, and I'm so grateful, Mitch and Jim, George, Julian, Danny, thank you guys so much. And you all have lots of places to choose from to be, so thank you guys for joining us as well.